You're listening to the IWD406 Podcast with your host, Julie Walls, where we celebrate, empower, and connect women across Montana and beyond. Join us as we share inspiring stories, valuable insights, and the voices of remarkable women making a difference in their communities.
Today on the podcast, we have Heather McAbee. Heather is a transformative facilitator, workshop, and retreat leader and owner of Shifting Sands Holistic Healing. Her most requested talk, From Trauma to Triumph, inspires audience to break the chains of generational trauma patterns by taking charge of their own healing. She is most known for her signature program, Meeting Yourself Again. I love it. Heather assists people who have been hurt or mistreated in erasing the beliefs that keep them from feeling love, connection, and belonging so they can live the life they wished for but never dreamed they could achieve. That's really pretty. Heather is a certified repattering practitioner, EFT, TFT, tapping master practitioner, a Maggie Block facilitator, solution-based hypnotherapist, and level 2 aerial yoga instructor. She is also certified in muscle testing, family systems therapy, and family constellations. Heather is constantly curious and a weaver of wow. Say that 3 times fast. She believes in the power of making dreams come true. Heather enjoys spending quality time with her husband and her 2 teens, playing cards and vacationing on warm, sunny beaches all around the globe. I got to live your life, Heather. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Julie. I'm happy to be here.
I'm happy to see you. You are just, I'm so looking forward to this conversation. Welcome. I want to start with our signature question. Are you from Montana?
I am not.
Where are you from?
I was born and raised in a one-stoplight town called Cedro-Woolley in Western Washington.
In Western Washington. So you could blink, right? And you'd pass it?
You could.
You could. So small town life, huh?
Yeah, there were 3,000 to 5,000 people there when I grew up.
Oh, okay. You are from a town bigger than my town. My town, I think we had maybe, I would say 800. I know it's grown since then, but yes, you are definitely around families that are deeply entrenched in the community, right? All the cousins go to school together. There's a lot of family ties.
Yes.
So what was your childhood life growing up?
My childhood was an interesting one where I was raised in a home where what happened behind closed doors was very different from what the world saw outside. My dad was abusive. He was an alcoholic. And I was raised in a very strict religion that kept a lot of on my head, if you want to put it that way. I had a codependent, very loving, but codependent mother. And so it was a bit chaotic.
Did you have brothers and sisters?
Yeah, there's 4 of us. I'm number 3.
You're number 3.
Yeah.
In what order? Were you the oldest?
So I'm number 3. I have a brother, sister, me, and then a little sister.
Oh, and then the little sister. Okay, gotcha. Okay. Were you the only one that was dealing with that, or were they all dealing with it?
With the abuse? Yeah, we all were dealing with it in different facets.
Okay, got you.
I seemed to be the one that he liked to beat. My brother was the one that he seemed to like to really berate, but we all got pieces of it.
Wow.
Basically, if you want to name a form of abuse, I probably experienced it. It was every facet.
You know what? And growing up, I want to say this. It's interesting because in the 70s and 60s, before all of that, there was, whatever happened in your home life happened in your home life. There wasn't a lot of intervention unless it was severe, right? And then the 80s hit, and then protection came into play, right? A child couldn't show up to school with bruises and no one couldn't ask any questions, right? And then there was a lot more eyes on families and what they did behind closed doors. Did that change at all in the 80s for you?
That is actually my story is I was beaten so severely, my mom kept me home from school because she was afraid I would be taken away.
Holy buckets, Heather.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I sat in a back room in our house with ice packs on and ice baths and
Wow.
I healed up.
And then that's insanely traumatizing. And for those listening in, this is Heather's story, and I just want to make sure to put that out there. But as we're walking through this journey, I can't even imagine, was there a feeling of trapped? Because and obviously you're little, you can't leave. Was there a time where you decided to leave the home?
My parents divorced when I was 12.
Okay.
So what ended up happening is it was that whole scene was just traumatic in itself. But my dad woke us all up. So middle of the night, it was probably midnight, I don't know, and made us all come out into the living room. And he said, "Your mom wants to divorce me. She wants me to leave. What do you guys think?" And we all were like, "Yes, please."
Yeah.
So it was, but that whole scene was just really ugly that it was put on us for
Yes,
him to
at 12
go
years
now.
old.
Yeah,
Yeah. Not even developed emotionally, and to have to make a decision for your parents?
right.
Unreal.
Yeah, it was pretty unreal.
So did you end up going with your mom at that point?
Yeah, my dad left the house.
Okay.
The 4 kids stayed, and then there was visitation, and the 3 of us older kids were old enough that the judge let us choose whether we wanted to go visit him, and we all chose not to. But
But
my
it
younger sister is a lot younger, and she had to go.
but in the same instance, again, going backwards on what you said in the beginning is you don't tell, right? So having the judge have some insight into your family life and being closeted on what you've experienced, there had to have been a lot of confusion going on in your head at that time.
There was a lot of confusion.
Yeah. Walk me through that period.
I think all of it is confusing. I think anytime an adult hits a child, it's confusing.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the time it's presented as, "I love you. This is why I'm hitting you," like with spankings.
Mhm.
And
Just for your own good.
I don't, yeah, I just don't see that as love. I think that's very confusing for a child that their caregiver, the one who's supposed to love them the most, is physically harming them,
Yes.
even in the name of guidance.
Yeah, and I do remember, like I said, going back in the 80s, we could get spanked at school, and then it ended in the 80s, but then it seemed like it shifted to more of the emotional abuse of berating or belittling or again, putting things back on the child during that time frame that were adult matters. And then it becomes sneakier, right? And you can't really detect
Right.
emotional abuse.
I could. But I don't think anyone who's not trained could. There,
Right.
I remember we were called so many names and belittled so much that I remember saying, "I would rather be hit than the things that he was calling us," because it messes with your mind so much. And you have just this non-belief in yourself and in your worth that I was just like, "I would hit me all day long instead. I'd rather
Wow.
that."
So then, okay, fast forward, you live with your mom. Did you
Yeah.
end up, now you're with your mom, did you feel safer?
Oh, yeah.
You did. Because at that point, she's away from him. I'm assuming there was probably a lot of abuse towards her. Now she's away from him. And how was she processing that divorce? And then how was she communicating that with you guys?
I think some mistakes were made there, in my opinion. I remember conversations of, "Your dad's this or that, and he treated me this way," almost like
Hitting?
sharing too much with a
Okay.
child.
Yeah.
I think that places the child in a sticky position of having A, to choose between mom and dad, but also B, the stickiness is now I'm more like a best friend rather than a child to you. And then that messes with the hierarchy in the family system. It messes with
Absolutely.
the energy flow, I guess would be an easier way to say it.
Which I want to talk about that when we get to your methodology piece, because I want to pin that. So then at that point, were you then, now you're having to make life decisions, right? You're living with your mom, you're going through high school, you're going through the motions. And then did you decide at that point, I got to get out of here in general? Did you leave the home? Did you go to college? What did you do?
In the end, I ended up leaving that small town.
Okay.
And I moved to another town in Western Washington, which seemed really big to me. It was about the size of Billings.
Okay. Yeah.
That was huge compared to where I came from. And it was very eye-opening to me that there's a whole nother world out here. Not just this tiny little world that I grew up in with all the same people that I grew up with. I had to learn I had to find a gas station. I had to find a grocery store. We had one grocery store in town. We had one gas station. So there were all of these things that I had to learn as I moved into this big town. And I had to learn how to make friends and who to be friends with and all of the things.
Yeah. And meanwhile, you hadn't yet processed all the things you had dealt with yet, right?
Oh, no. No,
No.
not even close. I hadn't even begun. I didn't even know that I could actually, probably.
So then coming in, when did you move to Montana?
We moved for real in 2019. We lived here for a stint for 1 year in 2016 to 17.
Okay. So I'm going to back up too. When did you meet your husband?
I was 25.
You were 25. So you moved away from home into a bigger city,
Yeah.
started exploring your life, figuring things out. Were you at that point considering doing the things that you do now professionally, or were you
No.
completely different?
Yeah, I was a construction accountant. I
Okay.
did that for 22 years, I think.
Oh,
And it
wow.
was in my last construction job. I was the controller and the office manager, started taking some courses, and she was telling me about them. It was 100% foreign to me. I knew nothing about energy. I knew nothing about family systems, like in the terms that I use them, nothing. And I was very curious about the things that she was saying. And then what ended up happening, do you want the whole story?
Yeah, I do. And I want to note too, during that 22 years, were you experiencing things such as, which we all know, we're all seeing now the science out there of the impact of specifically looking at the ACE study. And I'm going to put that in the site referencing, but looking at the ACE study of a childhood adverse trauma, right? So you've experienced all that and then how it manifests physically in the body. Were you during those 20 years starting to see signs and symptoms of unresolved trauma?
Absolutely.
Okay, so can you walk me through that and then tell us your story?
I'm a 10 out of 10 on an ACE
Yeah,
test.
I can't either.
And okay, so tell me what question you want me to answer?
So going back in time, did you start seeing things in your own personal life during those 22 years before you became a practitioner, helping people for generational trauma? Were you seeing things in your own life starting to develop where you're like, oh, this woman came in my life. She was doing something that seemed out of the ordinary. Were you experiencing things that you're like, I'm curious because that may help me? No?
I don't think that's how it went.
Okay.
No, the things that I experienced, let me start that again. The things that I experienced really had to do with my relationships with men.
Okay.
So that's where my light bulb moments were, but I don't know that they necessarily felt like light bulb moments at the time.
Okay.
I can give you one example. I was in my early 20s and I started dating a guy that I'd met in a club. That's how we all meet, it seems back in the day. And there were these little things where he would like whisper things in my ear, and I was like, that it crossed boundaries. We'll just say that.
Okay.
Boundaries that I'd already been clear about. And then one day I was at his apartment and he had this huge husky that never got exercise. And the dog knocked me down. It knocked me to the ground and it pulled my shirt. And I was embarrassed, but B, I was also terrified. There was a lot
Yeah.
of things happening.
Yeah.
And I ended up going back home. I lived several hours away. And he called me on the phone and he was screaming at me. And he said, basically, if you don't love my dog, you don't love me. Yeah. And I was shaking he's hours away and I'm shaking. I was very scared. And I ended up calling a friend of mine who it was this guy and we always shared everything. And I was like, how do I find these guys? Because this wasn't the first time something similar had happened. And I said, do I have a light bulb on my forehead?
Mm.
And his response to me was, Heather, you find them. Because I was like, no, the question I said was, how do these guys find me? Do I have a light bulb on my forehead? And he said, Heather, you find them. And it made me really mad.
Yeah.
But then after I processed it, the reality is it goes both ways. We found each other. If we are operating on the same vibration, on the same frequency, the victim and the perpetrator will always find each other. So I could be in a club with 200 people and the one guy that's going to abuse me is the one that I decided to date.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there's so many layers to this to dive deeper into. I look at that in a way of, like you said, vibrational frequency. You attract the kind of, it's almost like a perpetrator attracting a people pleaser, because the people
Yeah.
pleaser just wants to cow people please, right? So then the perpetrator knows there's no boundaries, right? So there's this
That is
openness of do whatever you want, right? And then I'll just take that abuse. So you were
right.
of those types.
Yes and no, because I didn't end up putting up with it in the end.
Which is great, right?
It's great.
Yeah.
But I always seemed to attract it. And then if
Right.
I did date a nice guy, there was no chemistry. Yeah, I don't really like him that much. Break up. So it was very interesting to look back on the patterns that I had when it came to what I was attracting.
And I want to go back to what you just said is that chemistry piece is because chaos must have been felt like safety to you. Is that right?
It did. It
Yeah.
did. Even though it didn't, it did. It felt comfortable.
Why do you think that is, Heather, for people?
Because that's what our nervous system is used to. We
Right.
always go back to where we're comfortable. That's why all of the sayings are, if it makes you uncomfortable, do it. That's where your growth is.
But yet you're saying with the people that you were not attracted to, they were too comfortable, right? They're boring. They're just complacent and comfortable, right?
It's a different kind of comfort than
Yes.
the interpretation that you're having right now. It's not comfortable to be in chaos, but it's comfortable because it's what we're used to.
Okay, I love this. I love this. So when your friend told you that you were attracting to it, was that when the light bulb started going off and you said you were angry at first? What
Yeah.
were you angry about?
How dare he say I attracted them?
Okay,
I
okay.
had zero accountability.
Zero accountability.
Yes.
And then where did you take it from there?
From there, it would have been, gosh, I mean, it was years later when I found the work that I do now. It was really years later, 13.
Right. Okay, but I want to ask you this and we could edit this, but you're married at this point.
Not when I was talking to that friend.
Okay, got you. Okay, that's right. Okay, that's right. But then later on, and you hadn't done the work, you met your husband. Were you starting to like see, because you've been married to him for a long time, right? You guys are going on 20 years?
We're going on 20 years.
20 years.
He
So
was a nice guy,
nice guy.
and I really tried to push him away.
Uh-huh.
I even broke up with him at one point. We had a 3-month break,
Yes.
and he didn't give up.
That was my husband. We have very similar backgrounds, Heather. where the nice guy was like, no way. Mm-mm.
But
No.
one thing that I appreciated about Adam
Yes.
is he was emotionally consistent. And that was something I had not experienced.
Yes.
So he stayed pretty emotionally consistent and he stayed persistent. Like,
Oh,
she's worth it. I'm going to keep going because I didn't think I had worth.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I love this. So fast forward to when did that conversation come into play with the woman that you met?
Okay. So I was in my mid 30s and
Okay.
I was working in this construction company. The office manager's taking the courses. She's telling me, and she says, I need to practice to be certified. If you ever want a session, let me know. And she like slides me her card. We never had talked about childhood trauma. We never had talked about my background. She didn't know anything. And I actually had a problem in my marriage. And what was happening for me is there was a specific time, it happened every single month, where I felt worthless to my husband, that I couldn't serve him. And that was part of the programming that I grew up with, was you need to be serving your man and all of these different facets. And so I was like, I'll give this a try. I had done traditional counseling for 14 years, on and off, 4 years straight, every week, then on and off as things would come up. And I ended up at this woman's house and she was using muscle testing. And she said, this problem originated when you were 6 years old. Do you remember what happened at 6? And I said, honestly, I don't know if I was 5 or 6, but I know at some point near that time, I was molested by my babysitter. And she tested it again and she said, that is the experience. The limiting beliefs that you developed because of that experience is I'm not worthy. And I started sobbing. I had never, in my whole time in counseling, we had never, ever gone that deep. We'd never gone that deep, period. But in 60 minutes, for her to uncover the experience, the age, the belief, and how that was relating 30 years later, I think I was 36 years old, how that was relating 30 years later to my marriage. And then I walked away from that session, and then the aha started happening. I have felt worthless in every aspect of my life. In my job, I never was paid what I should have been paid. In my relationships, I wasn't with nice guys. If I was, I pushed them away. In my health, I had so many things going on health wise. Every aspect of my life, that one pattern had played out.
Wow.
So that's when I was like, what is this? And how do I learn more?
Yeah.
And took off running, essentially.
But here's my thinking though. Okay. So once somebody uproots something, right? Now you see this, I'm not worthy. You found it, but then how do you change it? Because
Yeah.
looking at patterns in families, right? We're going to be talking about generational trauma patterns in families. That's a deeply rooted system, and being around all those behaviors energetically, you, I have felt, and I'm just going to be transparent, is during my process of all the different things I've done, different modalities, you uproot this crazy belief system, and then you pull it right out, right? You rip it right out of the ground and you're like, okay, what do I do with this? And this is so deeply ingrained. And now I'm around all these people that have also had similar belief systems. What do you do and how do you start working with it to change it?
I know a lot of ways that I can change the energy around all of it. They're internal processes. So as you're looking at all of these people around you that have ties to those roots, there becomes so much awareness for all of it. That has to be a really big piece of it. You have to have your own awareness, but then you have to have awareness for them.
Yes.
We all have our journey, right? So not everyone is going to want to be pulling roots out as quickly as we are. Not everyone is going to want to look at the root. Some people don't even want to start. And so that's just, we have to have this almost, the word almost might be grace for these other people
Right.
and
And
for
even,
ourselves because everything is so layered.
yeah.
You might have one root, but there might be 7 right next to it. And this is the first one that I was ready to look at.
And
That's where
you felt ready. You felt ready right when it was pulled. Why is it at that moment, the muscle testing, everything, you were ready then? But I'm assuming with the 14 years of therapy that you did before, you probably danced around it a lot. Because I know I felt like in my own journey, Heather, is things were trickled in here and there. I know that I had great therapists, I had great coaches. They were all absolutely wonderful people. I always felt like I probably just led everybody around the area of where we should have tapped into and didn't really go there. Is it the lack of tools such as muscle testing, or is it the unwillingness that I didn't want to discover it?
it can be both.
It could be both. But for you,
And
you're like, I want to figure this out.
yeah, I was desperate.
Okay.
I was
Yeah.
so tired of the way I felt in my marriage. I was so tired of it.
Yeah. Yeah. That pain
But
gets really, you hit a max.
yeah.
And
Yeah, because I just felt like garbage for an entire week every single month. And then the other 3 weeks weren't that great. But the 1 week was super garbage. It was garbage and super garbage.
which is,
And I
you
want
hear
none of
this
it.
from women. You hear this in conversations of, I don't know what's wrong with me. And then they start throwing out hormones, or it's got to be physical, and maybe it's not physical. Maybe
Yeah,
it's something that is deeply stored within us that we just really haven't had the wherewithal, or somebody like you that comes into our lives and says, let's figure it out.
right. I think that is a big thing. And there's not a lot of things that I will credit to more than healing the emotional wounds from the past. I think that is the number one ticket to everything.
To even physicality issues, symptomology.
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank
Yes.
you.
Everything.
I love that. And my other thinking is when you started to unravel, it's the onion it's like, here's the onion, one little layer comes, oh, there's another one, right? You started unraveling those pieces, and that process of all the emotions that come up. How did you start to compartmentalize? Number one. And number two, I want to talk about the wounds that you were carrying and the people. Did you still interact with your dad at that point, and your mom and all the people in your life? Did you have to push those things away to be able to start compartmentalizing?
I hadn't really had a relationship with my dad since he moved out.
Okay.
There was in my early 20s when I first moved to Bellingham, the other town, I did reach out to him and I had a little bit of interaction with him 2 or 3 times and felt horrible. It did not feel good. And so I wrote him a letter and said, I can't do this. I thought maybe I could. I thought maybe this is what I wanted. But it's interesting to look back on that too, because here I am, a lone girl in a lonely town. And what do I want? I want the love of a dad. That's what I want.
Yeah.
Who doesn't? But especially when you're in a vulnerable position like I was in.
Yeah.
But still, there was that wherewithal within me of this doesn't feel good. I'm going to try it, but it doesn't feel good. And so I cut it off. My mom, yes, my mom has always been very loving. I've always had a relationship with her. I did in that same kind of time frame go through a lot of anger toward her. And I would say when I started my true healing process after 36, I got angry with her again
Mhm.
because it was like, wait a minute. Why didn't you protect me?
Mhm.
Why didn't you call the cops? Why didn't you kick him out sooner? There were all of these things that came up. And I even had some conversations with her. And I asked her, I said, why didn't you call the police?
Mhm.
And She didn't have an answer, honestly. She was just like, I don't know. She was so in her own junk. I don't know
Yeah.
what word to use. That she had a lot of childhood wounds as well.
Yeah.
And she was very stuck inside of the way that she was operating.
And I want to say this because this is a really important conversation. I found for myself and in conversations with women, oftentimes when you start going down these roads, the ones that abandon you, you almost have, I feel like you have more anger towards than the ones that actually inflicted the trauma. Because either it's for me a self defense mechanism that I carry where you know this, it's just who they are. It's what he knew growing up. He was beaten or whatever. You give these excuses, but the ones that were standing in the room witnessing it, you're almost more angry with them because they didn't do anything to protect you because and then that abandonment piece comes into play. Why wasn't I worth it to fight for? Did you experience that as well?
I wouldn't say that my mom didn't do anything to protect.
Okay. Yeah.
She did what she knew how to do. However, if I'm someone with that childhood wound and I develop a certain emotion and I develop a certain belief about myself or about men or about women because of that experience, 30 years later, me consciously looking back, saying she did the best that she could do and she had these wounds and things like that, that's a conscious rationalization. It doesn't do anything for the child. So it doesn't do anything to heal the wound itself. All it's doing is helping that adult aspect make sense of it. But if I really want to heal, I need to help heal that child. And to heal that child, I need to acknowledge their feelings. And I need to do some processes to help them believe in themselves again.
That
If
is
their need is to be protected, I need to come in and protect them.
right. So
And
with that, go ahead, Heather. Sorry. Keep going.
what happens a lot is people superimpose their current relationship, hoping that their current relationship will heal those childhood wounds, and they cannot. That is so important for people to realize is our current relationship will not heal our childhood wounds. We have to heal it ourselves. However, we get into relationship to reenact those childhood wounds so that we can try to bring resolution to them. It's all unconscious. The way that we keep bringing things into our lives to heal. And until we realize, till we take that accountability, we're going to keep reenacting it.
Yes. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, what you just said just gave me chills. And but the thing is, how do you become aware that you're reenacting it? Is that the work? Because people
That's
are
part of
walking through life and they're still doing it. And until it's pointed
right.
out to them, right? They
Yeah,
don't
but the way it usually starts is I'm so tired of A, B, or C.
Yes. The pain
And
has
so, yeah,
yeah.
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 So once they get so tired of it, then they seek help.
So then as you started to dive down that road and you started to see some revelation, right? What then changed within your own environment, like relationships with your husband? I know self becomes first, your relationship with yourself, and then going backwards and looking. And a lot of people don't want to do that, going back to look at their child self. And some people can't even wrap their head around that concept. So that was in the past. And, or how do I rectify with my 4-year-old self or 6-year-old self?
Mhm.
Those pieces, how do you walk people through that process?
Very gently.
Very gently. Yeah. Yes. You have to. Is there sometimes
With a
walls
soft
there?
voice.
Yes.
Oh,
Is there sometimes walls there that are built up around it?
yeah. I actually had a woman a yearish ago. We did an interview to see if I could help her, and she dumped all of this information. And she said, I do not want to talk about that 9-year-old me ever. And I was like, okay. Of course, I'm muscle testing. I'm doing all the things. She ended up buying a package from me. And of course, it went back to her 9-year-old. And I knew that she had said that to me, but I just was very gentle in the way that we approached it. And she has worked so hard on that 9-year-old, and it's been amazing to watch her blossom.
Oh, wow. Oh,
Yeah,
wow. Well,
yeah.
and that resistance to doing the work, it's work.
I
It
know.
really is. There's so many layers to what comes up for resistance is, am I never going to, some people, I'm never going to win. It doesn't matter. And then why do the work? It's just like working out. Why get up? I'm never going to lose the weight kind of thing.
Yeah,
Resistance pieces.
yeah. It doesn't feel great to give yourself a six-pack ab.
It truly does. And it sucks. But yeah, it's important. And yeah, and hearing from families, and I'm sure you see this all the time. Has there been any patterns that keep coming up, surfacing over and over again that you see with childhood or generational trauma?
Patterns as in belief systems that people have
Yes.
formed.
Yeah.
A lot of the time is I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. I'm not loved. I'm stupid has been coming up quite a bit lately.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of pretty similar. What do we all want in life? We just want to be loved.
Yeah. That
And then
is
we have all these barriers.
right. Yeah, it is. It
I
is.
have had
Go ahead.
I have had people when because when I'm muscle testing, I'm testing for your higher self.
Yeah.
What does your higher self need to move past this problem that you're bringing me? And I have had it where even if I just start explaining what the process is to someone, they move into an energy constriction. And even though it tested as what they need right in that moment, their physical body was like, I can't handle it. And so I have to move them through that constriction sometimes and scrap the repatterning that came up until I get whatever is stuck in their body out. And then the next time we can usually look at it. But there have been visceral reactions before where I've had to move people through a process before we move into the next step.
Okay. Okay. Explain that. So now when you're, how, explain the whole muscle testing. Cause I think that's just fascinating.
I think it is the most important tool that anyone should ever learn.
Okay. Yes.
Muscle testing is telling me it's using a muscle. I use my fingers. So if my finger is strong together, then I'm getting a yes response. I'm only asking yes or no questions. If the muscle is weak, it goes down, and it's a no. I'm a yes or no question asker to the higher
Okay.
self. In person, I can use someone's arm. They can hold their arm out, they can hold it like this, it doesn't matter. And if I push on it and it stays up, then that's a yes. If I push on it, it falls down, then that's a no. So in the trainings that I have, I'm telling their brain, your muscle is telling me what's happening in your subconscious.
Okay.
And our bodies respond. They respond naturally to what our programming is. So if you were to say, I am Julie,
Yeah.
it stays strong. If you're going to say, I'm Roberta, your body knows what you are or are not. That's all muscle testing is.
Despite the fact, Heather, that if you do Zoom calls with people, are so that energy, are you watching their behavior or are you closing your eyes and stating something and then feeling that energy from afar? Or is
I
it all
do
of
both.
it? Okay,
It's
gotcha.
all of it. When I'm on Zoom, even when we're in person, when you make an appointment with me, you're giving me permission to access your energy field.
Yeah.
And that's all I need. If I can proxy into your energy field, I can find your yes or no answers.
Mm.
Because everything is energy. We are all interrelated in energetic wise. And yes, I can access it just that easily.
And it's interesting. So you had to go through all that energy testing training, right? Testing training. And then how are you then finding the blocks? Is it purely just asking those questions? And how are you then knowing where the block, like the age of the block? I think that's freaking fascinating.
It is. I asked that question. Did this originate somewhere at a certain age? Yes. And then I'll check. Is it prenatal? No. Is it birth process? No. Is it 0 to 5? No. Is it 6 to 10? Yes. 6, 7, 8. It's age 8. That's how I do
Okay.
it.
But then how do you then go back? You've even gone back even further before the person was born.
I have.
Explain that. That to me is fascinating when you're doing the generational trauma work.
So then you start getting into epigenetics.
Okay.
And I cannot give you a specific study on epigenetics, but
Okay.
I've been research. Bruce Lipton has amazing information on epigenetics. I have an article that my mom actually sent me several months ago, and I can send it to you if you want. But it's beautiful because it talks about how these things are passed down through our DNA. And the article even talks about how the DNA of a child is still in the mother. So we're interconnected.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to look at something that was my great grandmother, she's still part of my DNA and I'm part of hers.
Right.
And so if I start to clear whatever it is in me, then I'm healing the whole family line forward and backwards.
It raises the question of even the existential piece of people that have passed, whether or not they're still holding on to something. We're getting deep here, Heather.
Oh,
But I love
a huge topic.
I love this. And I really want you to come back on so we can dive deeper into this. But the existential piece of the quantum realm, right? You look at, and this could be woo for some people. This could be really woo for people. And it can go into religion and all those pieces. And I don't want to go there. But you look at the passing and then the fact that you can tap into that energy field that's past years prior.
Mhm.
And to know that energy has been carried into the state of the physical being of who we are today. And once you start clearing that, the thinking that you're clearing an ancestor that doesn't even exist on this plane right now, you're tapping into a science that is so unknown. However, I
However,
however, I do believe that there are hidden studies that are out there that have been doing this for years, for decades. And these discoveries are, if they can tap it like you can, look at what the healing can happen for communities.
right.
Your hometown where everybody's cousins and aunts and uncles and they all live in the same area for decades, right? Doing the same thing and thinking the same feelings and having the same disease states.
Right.
It's pretty mind-blowing.
So can I tell you a story?
Yeah, you tell me a story. I love it. I could talk to you all day. Go, Heather.
About a year ago, my whole life I have had horrible pain with my period.
Okay.
The first 2 days I'm on the couch, heating pad, terrible pain and depressive, sad.
Yeah.
And one day about a year ago, I was like, why am I doing this? Why don't I do a session on it? It occurred to me.
Yeah.
And I did. And I was first day of my period, horrific sacral pain. The pain, I'll tell you the full story. So the session went back to my grandmother's 7 generations maternal side.
Wow.
And the feeling she had was sadness. What I did was I removed the sadness. Put it that way. I resolved the sadness in her and my pain went away. I'm not kidding you. 2 months ago, all of a sudden I realized because the pain was intertwined with the sadness, right? And I had realized that the pain had gone away. But about 2 months ago, I realized I'm not sad those first 2 days either.
Wow.
It's like I have a whole new cycle, right? But This is the stuff that we're talking about. These wounds get passed down through the DNA until someone steps forward to heal it.
Is it as simple as giving permission to let it go?
That is part of the process.
Okay.
And so that sometimes when I'm having processes with people, we do look at the ancestor, whether they knew them or didn't know them, and we ask permission. Please see me in a different light. Please let me let this go. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then the ancestor looks back at them and they say, I give you permission.
Wow.
I might have done this differently, but you have permission to live your own life. And it's amazing what happens.
Now, let me ask you this. Is there times where it's no resistance of, I'm not going to let, and then you have to uncover what the resistance is. And therefore that person still is maybe locked in on it saying, I can't let it go. Then what do you do then?
Not necessarily,
Not
because
necessarily.
the
Okay.
ancestor wants to keep it, they get to keep it.
Okay.
But we want to be free from it. Sometimes they don't want to give us permission to be free. But 99% of the time they do. They don't want to see us suffer.
Is that when you go into that constellation piece where that hierarchy of transference of energy? Am I saying that right when it comes to constellations of,
That is an aspect of it.
okay, talk to me a little bit about that, because I think that's also a fascinating piece that you do for your methodology.
So in my opinion, a constellation is an external picture of what is happening in our unconscious.
Okay.
And so when I first, so these figures are constellation figures that I use. There's different ways of doing constellations. When I put the figures on the board initially, it's usually pure chaos because that's what's happening in the person's system. And so then as we start to uncover what's happening, then we can start to move the figures around so we can put them in order. So there's all kinds of ways of doing constellations. We can do them with the family unit, but we can also do them with pieces of ourselves. Like, where do I self-sabotage? So I might have me, and I might have self-sabotage, and I might have health.
Mm.
And the constellation can be doing what it's doing. And then as we start to organize things, then all of a sudden, internally, I feel like I have the drive, I have the power to go be healthy. Is an example.
Yes. I love that. Yeah, I like the
We
fact
did
that,
it.
no, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
No,
Oh,
I
we did
like order. I like the fact that you're
it.
taking a case, and I think life is order. I think the way that the universe and God, that's all perfectly symbiosis, like in order. It's all, I don't think the world operates well in chaos. And I
It
think we're
doesn't.
all meant to be in an orderly situation. Yet, however, it's an allowance of chaos, which I don't quite understand. There's an and we're getting really deep, but I look at the universe and think it has an allowance for chaos. Why? But yet it really operates best in order. And I think that's in all aspects of life and
Yeah.
in general.
Yeah. We do want to be in order. We want to be balanced. That's where we feel the most peace.
Yeah, we do. That's true. Yes. When I'm imbalanced, I'm great. When I'm not, no bueno for anyone.
Yeah.
No, that's right. These are such, when you're listening, as you guys are listening to this, you have to get a session with her just to understand her processes. It's pretty light bulby. There's just a lot of light bulbs that go off. And even if they don't go off within a session, post session, have you found with a lot of your clients that there's a lot of like, when you follow up with them the next time, like, so what happened after our last session? And then you're like, okay, 2 weeks later, I'm sitting around and all of a sudden a light bulb went off. Do you see that a lot?
Yeah. Even the example I just gave of myself, I didn't realize the sadness had gone away for 8 months. But this work is so quiet. The way it starts moving things around in our brain and our nervous system, sometimes we notice it immediately. And the pain went away. I noticed that immediately, but I hadn't noticed that other extra piece that's so fantastic.
Right.
And so there's all of these things. My brother calls it a thankless work because we forget that we were that way because it just went away and we aren't that anymore. And so until there's some conscious awareness that brings us back, oh, that's right. I used to yell every time someone dropped something, and I haven't done that in 5 months. There's just things that we don't even realize we're not doing anymore. Sometimes we do, but it's very quiet.
I love that. I love that you just said that. I do want to switch gears just a little bit, and we're going to touch point on this about forgiveness, because I think you have a beautiful perspective on forgiveness, especially with childhood trauma. Let's talk a little bit about what forgiveness is and what's your perspective on the act of forgiveness.
I think my perspective is different from what a lot of people might tell you forgiveness is.
Okay.
Forgiveness is this is my perspective. Forgiveness is only about me. It's about me being able to move beyond whatever happened. Sometimes I might need to forgive myself because I allowed it or I participated in it or something like that. And really, actually, that is more important to me than anything else is forgiving myself. But when it comes to childhood trauma, like a parent child, it's very important to maintain the order of energy flow in a family. By that, I'll use the word hierarchy. So if you think of order and flow within a family system, there's me, then there's my parents, then their parents. And the flow starts from the oldest ancestor all the way down to me. So now if I have a parent that abused me, my dad abused me. If I forgive him in the sense of I am better than you, my dad's never going to apologize. So it isn't that. If I forgive him in the sense of I'm a bigger person than you, and I'm going to let this go, and you're forgiven, and we can move on, that then places me above my dad.
Okay.
I'm no longer in a humble position because I just said I'm better than you.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to forgive you. So now where's the energy flowing?
Yeah.
There's none because I'm above him.
Right.
So I need to stay down here and maintain my humble position and say, what you did to me was ruthless. What you did to me was ruthless, and it is your burden to carry, not mine. And that's where I achieve my internal process of letting it go, which is what the ultimate goal of forgiveness is.
So you're basically handing back that bag of the why. And you don't need to know the why, right? To be able to forgive. You just know that why isn't yours to continue to carry. And that's where I'm a visual person. So is that what I'm seeing or thinking?
Absolutely, you hand it back to them.
Okay, got you.
I even have people scan your whole body, find any tension, find anything residual. Because oftentimes what I'm carrying is shame and guilt that I was abused by him. I'm not the one who should feel shame for that. He should. I'm not the one who should feel guilty for that. I was 2. He should. So I'm going to gather all of that shame and guilt out of my body. And I'm going to say, this is yours.
Mm.
It's not mine. This is not mine to carry. And when I do these processes with people, they have no idea how much weight it was that they were carrying. And it's fantastic to watch them let it go.
Yes, absolutely. I don't want to go there, but something just came to me in regards to like when people make the comment, just give it back to God. I know we don't want to go religious talk, but I almost feel like that kind of just describes it of here, take it. But really the direction should be give it back to the person. And then I always think, let God handle that. That's where my mind goes is I won't have to, that won't be my burden to have to carry moving into the next level, state, whatever that looks like. Right. And I think just even thinking that and saying that gives a sense of relief because we walk around, we carry all this stuff. And oftentimes, like you mentioned, it's not even our stuff to carry.
Mhm.
And I like the way that you explain the constellation piece is that flow chart. If you're starting to step above or then ego comes into play. And you said you're not really humbling yourself. You're sidestepping and then wanting to power down. That's the way I'm looking at it in my head. But if you go, you know what? No, I'm going to carry the power within me that's actually my power. I'm going to give what is not. And then I can fill myself up completely and keep moving in a state of flow. Is that what I'm translating?
You are, yeah, I like that translation. And you also have to remember if I place myself above my parents, who I receive life energy from, where are my kids getting life energy?
Yes.
I need to stay here so that if you can picture it like a waterfall, so the top of the waterfall is our oldest ancestor. And as the water's coming down, it's just gushing. But then these wounds happen, these events happen, and then there's a log jam here. And so then there's not quite as much water coming down to the next person. And then there's debris here, and then there's not quite as much water. And we keep having all of these jams in the waterfall.
Yeah.
By the time it gets down here to me, sometimes there's hardly any energy. And so people are like, I'm so tired. I'm so sad. Yeah, because there's no water flowing.
Yes.
My parents are above, they don't know this. My parents are above my grandparents. Why don't I have any energy? Let's move everybody in the right order so that the energy can start flowing.
Right.
This is a huge concept, but that's just a little example, visual.
I love it. Now, I do I want to ask you, I know you do sessions. Are there ever any sort of like workshops that you do where you explain these concepts in further detail? Because I think once people get their heads wrapped around it, it makes sense to want to clear some of those pathways in our own lives. Do you do anything like that for
Mhm.
instruction?
I do. I actually have an event March 21st where I'm speaking at the Women's Leadership Conference in Billings.
Oh,
And I
great.
am going to explain these concepts in pretty good detail.
Yeah.
And then from there, I actually have an event planned in June for the Billings community and beyond, whoever wants to join us, but it's an in-person event where we are going to dive deep and we are going to practice the concepts together
Yeah.
and help you change your life.
I love it. You just light up when you talk about it. Do you feel you found your calling?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really fun.
Yeah. Did you ever see yourself in this role prior?
I don't think so.
No.
No.
Yeah.
I feel like the more I love learning, so I keep learning and developing more practices to bring into my practice. And I feel like the more I learn, the more I just want to keep sharing.
My other question though too is are people ever reaching that pinnacle space of healing? I know some people are like, is this ever going to get better? Or am I ever going to keep peeling back the onion layers? Am I ever going to get to a space in my life where I feel completely flow, balanced? Have you seen that? The pinnacle.
Is there a pinnacle?
Is there?
If there is, what would it look like?
I could see myself sitting on a beach, drinking a diet Sprite, and just my thoughts are just completely nothing but clouds and beauty and joy.
So I would say heck yes to that.
Okay, good. Can it stay
And
can it stay that way for the remainder of my life?
so here's the caveat.
Yes.
If you don't ever want to do anything else other than sit on that beach in peace, then fine. But
Okay.
if you decide, I want to grow a business or I want to change my health or if you want to change something, then we have to start working again.
I love this. Yeah, that's true. That is true. You have to always do the work, right? I love it. Now, okay, I'm looking ahead, Heather. What is one thing that you hope from this work that you're doing? What's a legacy that you hope to leave? It's a heavy
This
question.
makes me it makes me want to cry.
Oh,
Do you listen to country music?
oh yeah.
Tim McGraw, Standing Room Only.
Oh yes. Okay, yes.
What a legacy if there was standing room only. This girl, she's the one who helped me. This girl, she's the one who helped my kids. This girl.
You are. You are that girl. It's pretty
Thanks.
remarkable. I feel I know Dallas passed the mic to you and I talked to her and she's like, you just gotta meet her. You just gotta meet her. She's life changing. So you are doing it.
Thanks.
You are. So I'm really honored to have had this conversation. And I hate it. We're down to the last 3 questions, Heather.
Okay.
You should come back. We need to talk more. We can get deeper into these topics.
These are broad topics.
I know. I know. I want to just keep picking your brain and funneling it down. That's why I need to go to your workshops and listen to you speak in Billings, which is awesome. Okay.
I would love to have you.
huh?
I would love to have you.
I would love it. I would just stand there and be in awe. Okay. If you could go back in time and give advice to your ancestors about healing trauma, what would you say and how do you think they'd respond?
I think I would say, speak up. And I find this kind of an interesting question because in my own healing journey, I have visited my ancestors and I've asked for their permission to release certain patterns and to integrate new ones, like we talked about. And usually they are happy for me and they grant me permission. Occasionally, one will be angry. I've even had, I had one session where they turned their backs on me and I had to get their attention. No, I'm worth listening to. Come back, turn around, listen to me speak. And I had to be very assertive. I've never gone back to tell them my advice. I've asked for permission. So if I tune into the energy of that, then I think I would have to rephrase it to speak up and be brave.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I love that because if they were turning their backs, they're shunning because they had been shunned. And therefore, I love that you said, use your voice, speak
Yes.
up. That gave me chills. That's very cool. All right. Our fun question is
Okay.
if you were stranded on a deserted island and could choose only one companion, who would it be? And bonus points if you choose someone who'd be both entertaining and useful for survival.
I would have to choose my husband.
Okay.
He's very useful for survival, for sure.
Good. Yes.
Fixed a lot of things.
Yes.
He also knows me the most, probably the best of anyone. Him
Right.
and my brother know me the best of anyone.
I love that.
And he accepts all of my everything. We'll just put it that way.
I mean, it's so fun because we've been with our partners for close to 20 years. And they know everything about us, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And they still stick. They're still
I
there.
know.
You haven't left yet. But I think it's because they see the value. And I think that's what everybody wants is to find somebody that sees the value in you. And once you see that, and I love the fact that we said in the beginning, it's who you're attracting, right? And if you're attracting people that don't see the value in you, you got to let them go. And you got to do the work that Heather tells you to do. You do, right? Because we all want that. We want value and we want to feel completely and deeply loved.
I also just want to side note just a little bit.
Yeah.
We don't always want to let them go immediately because they're sending us a message. Because it's not always them. It's quite often us. And so we need to be looking at the patterns in ourselves that is causing whatever this friction is in the relationship. And when we do that, the relationship doesn't necessarily go away. It transforms.
I love that. It's far. And you do currently have a workshop. Is it for, no, you had a workshop for couples, right?
I'm running a workshop currently right now in February.
For couples.
It can be.
Okay.
I was describing it to someone a couple of weeks ago, and she said, so it's really not about being in, whether you're in a relationship or not, it's about being better in a relationship. And that's exactly true. Even if you're not in a relationship, what this workshop is going to do is it's going to help you be better in the next one. If you are in a relationship, it's going to help you be better in the relationship that you are in.
I love that. Yeah. It's very fitting for the month of February too.
Right? That's why I did it.
The month of love. So,
Yes.
All right. Our last question, which is our signature question for the podcast. If you could pass the mic to a Montana woman to be our guest on the podcast and share their story, who would she be and why?
I would love to pass the mic to Teresa Bybee. She was or is a mom of 7. She was a stay-at-home mom for most of their lives. And then her life took a massive turn a few years ago when her husband deserted her and the kids. And she has had to lean into all kinds of growth and grief and processes to help her overcome.
Wow. 7 children?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that is a lot to process.
Right.
Yeah. Is
Yeah,
she based in Billings?
She's in Billings.
Oh, I love that. Oh, I get to meet another Billings woman. I love it. Well, thank you so much. I'm excited to meet her. Teresa Bybee, is that what you said? Okay. Yeah. Wonderful. Welcome to the podcast, Teresa. I can't wait to meet you. Heather, you're amazing. And I was really excited to get an opportunity to learn more about your story. I knew you're already amazing because I've had conversations with you. And I wanted to dive deeper into your methodologies and learn a little bit more on how you do this work. And it's really quite remarkable. And you're helping so many people. And I'm just so honored to be in this space with you. So thank you so much.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Awesome.
Is there anything I can do for you as we end?
Just love on the podcast. Tell everybody about it. Get excited when your episode comes out. All things.
You got it.
You got it. All right. Thank you, Heather.
A special thank you to our podcast guest. You can find all of her links in the description of this episode. If you like what you heard, please hit subscribe. You will be notified of future podcast guests. Follow us on our social media platforms and stay tuned for our next podcast chat with an amazing Montana woman.